All right, this is Unit 2, Chapter 2, Lesson 3. Okay. So this chapter is all about using a budget. So the idea behind it is we're going to have a budget already set up for us, and then we're going to basically subtract the two numbers, and if it's a negative number, then they've spent more money than what they were planning on, and if it's a positive number, they spent less money, or if it's zero, they spent the exact amount that they were planning. So expense summary. So once you've completed a budget sheet outlining your past expenditures, you can use it to plan for future spending. So you might want to prepare an expense summary. So this report compares the amounts that you have spent to the amounts that you have budgeted. Okay, so that's your definition right there for expense summary. So it's a report that compares the amounts that you have spent to the amounts that you have budgeted. Okay. When you draft a budget, you should include an emergency fund. So this is extra money you set aside to use for unpredictable expenses, okay, such as medical bills and vehicle repairs. All right, so the example we're going to look at is Frank and Minnie Zorn have always kept accurate records of their expenditures. At the end of March, they prepared an expense summary. They had planned to spend $340 on groceries, but actually spent $361.85. How much more or less did they spend on groceries than they had budgeted? So they planned to spend $340, but they spent $361. So they spent more money than what they were planning on spending. When I subtract this, I get $21.85, which is more than the amount they budgeted. Okay. So looking at our concept check, complete the problems to find how much more or less the amount spent is than the amount budgeted. So number one, Zoe and Douglas Hamilton budgeted $167 and spent $158. So $167.80 to $158.90 is less. Okay, so when I subtract $167.80 minus $158.90, I get $8.90. And then for number two, Millie Bradley budgeted $647.50 and spent $671.92. So that's more. So I take $647.50 minus $671.92. Which gives me negative $24.42. So $24.42 more she spent. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. That's really all you're doing. So I want to go ahead and kind of walk you through what you're doing for your homework. So for the first problem, it says determine for all categories how much more or less the amount spent is than the amount budgeted. So for each one of these, A through S, you're going to subtract the amount budgeted minus the amount spent. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for number 3. So that's what you're doing for number 3. You're taking the amount, this number, subtract it from this, write down the difference. That's all you're doing for number 3. For number 4, which expenses for the month had a negative variance? So were they more, so any number that you come up with that's negative, that's what your answer is for number 4. For number 5, how much more or less did the Penders spend for all fixed expenses? So I'm going to look at fixed. And then I'm going to add up the differences P, Q, R, and S, and that will give me my answer for 5. I'm going to do the same thing for 6 with transportation, which is right here. I add G and H together. Okay, so for number 5, we're adding P plus Q plus R plus S. For 6, we add G plus H. For 7, which personal expenses did the penders spend more on than they had budgeted? Okay, so personal expenses, I'm going to go through here. Which ones did they spend more on? So which ones were negative? Okay. Which of, let's see, personal I, J, or K was negative? Number 8, how much more or less were their total personal expenditures for the month than the amount budgeted? So again, I just add I plus J plus K. And then for this one, for 9, how much more or less were their total entertainment expenditures? So entertainment is L, M, N, and O. So I add those together, add L plus M plus N plus O. And then for 10, I'm going to add everything together. Add all the letters, A through S. So for that, you're literally going to take the differences, A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus D, all the way down to S. Whatever you get, if it's a positive number, they had money left over. If it's a negative number, they spent too much money. Okay. So that's the end of chapter 2, lesson 3.